the lonely wait. The spaceport was always loud, filled with the hiss of engines and the echo of alien voices. Every evening, lights from ships painted the docks in gold and silver. Crowds came to welcome loved ones or trade goods, but in one corner of the docking bay sat a tiny figure, quiet and still. She was an alien girl no more than 12 by human eyes, with pale silver skin and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. Her clothes were worn, her small hands always clutched together in her lap. She never joined the crowd. She only waited. Every day she sat in the same place, her gaze fixed on the gates where ships arrived. When the heavy doors opened, her heart always jumped. She searched every face, every traveler, hoping to see two familiar figures step out. Her parents. But day after day, ship after ship, they never came. The other aliens noticed her waiting. Some shook their heads with pity, but most laughed behind her back. "Still waiting for ghosts," they whispered. "Her parents are gone. Lost years ago. She's too foolish to see it." Children sometimes ran past her, throwing pebbles, shouting cruel names. She never shouted back. She only lowered her head, whispering softly to herself, "They promised. They promised they would return." The girl had been waiting for years. She barely remembered her parents' faces anymore, only their voices. They had left for a mining mission on a far planet. Before leaving, her father had touched her cheek and said, "Wait for us. We'll come back with treasures. We'll never leave you." Those words became her whole life. Still, every night the spaceport lights dimmed and the crowds went home. The docks became empty, and she sat alone on the cold metal floor. Hope was the only warmth she had. She waited until the guards forced her to leave. Then she curled up in a corner of the streets, hungry, but still dreaming that tomorrow might be the day her parents returned. One night, when the station was quiet and the last ship had left, a human man walked through the port. He was tall, wearing a travel coat stained with dust, his eyes sharp from long journeys. He noticed her at once. She was too small, too fragile, sitting in the shadows like a forgotten statue. He slowed his steps. In all his years of traveling the galaxy, he had seen many strange things, warriors, merchants, hunters, but never a child waiting like this, filled with such silent hope. The girl lifted her head for a moment. Their eyes met. For a second, he saw the shimmer of tears in her alien eyes, but also something deeper, faith that refused to die. She quickly looked away, afraid of his gaze. Most people laughed or ignored her. She expected the same from this stranger, but the human did not laugh. He did not walk past. He stood still, watching her as if trying to understand. The sound of the engines had faded. The docks were silent. Only the hum of distant machines filled the air. The man stepped closer, his boots echoing on the floor. The girl tensed, clutching her hands tighter. She was ready for cruel words, ready for another stranger to tell her she was foolish. But instead, his voice was quiet and gentle. "Who are you waiting for?" he asked. The girl froze. No one had asked her that in years. Her lips trembled, and for a long moment she could not answer. Then she whispered, "My parents." The human tilted his head. "Where are they?" She lifted her eyes, shining with both hope and pain. "They went on a mission. They promised to come back. I wait here every day. They will return." The man's chest tightened at her words. He looked at the empty gates, the cold floor where she sat, the thin frame of her body that showed she had gone hungry many nights. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. But he said nothing yet. The girl's voice grew softer. "Others say they're gone, but they don't know. I know my parents. They will come back. They promised." Her small voice carried into the silence, fragile but unbroken. The human felt something stir deep inside him. He had been many things in life, soldier, traveler, survivor. But in that moment, looking at her lonely figure, he felt something new. Anger. Not at her, but at the world that left her like this. He did not move closer. Not yet. But he knew this was not the last time he would speak to her. Something inside whispered to him, "This child has been waiting too long. Someone must stand beside her. The girl turned back to the gates, her eyes fixed once again as if another ship might arrive at any second. The human stood in the shadows watching her, questions burning in his mind. Why was she alone? Why had no one helped her? Why did she believe her parents would return when everyone else had given up? The spaceport lights flickered, signaling the end of the day. The guards began to move through the halls, pushing out the last wanderers. The girl rose slowly to her feet, her small shoulders bent, but her eyes still fixed on the doors. The human clenched his fists. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. But one thing was clear. This was no ordinary waiting. Something was hidden here. Something no one had dared to uncover. And he was about to find out. The stranger's question. Next day, the alien girl returned to her usual spot by the gates of the spaceport. The place was crowded again, filled with voices, laughter, and the clatter of boots on metal floors. But she sat alone, her thin body pressed against the cold wall, eyes fixed on the giant doors. Ships landed and departed one after another, their engines filling the air with thunder. Families rushed forward, lovers reunited, merchants argued over prices, but none of it touched her. She only watched, always waiting. Among the crowd was the same human from last night. He had stayed at a low-cost inn nearby, but he could not forget the girl's eyes. He told himself he was only curious, but deep down, he knew it was more. Something about her had stirred him, something that made him feel restless. He moved through the crowd, his tall frame and earthborn features standing out among the aliens. Soon he saw her again, sitting silently, small and fragile in the chaos. She looked like a shadow everyone ignored. This time, he did not stand far away. He walked up to her slowly, making sure his steps were not heavy, not threatening. When he reached her, he crouched down so his eyes met hers. The girl blinked at him, startled. Most people never stopped. Why was this stranger looking at her again? The human spoke gently. "You're here again," he said. She nodded without a word. "You're waiting," he continued. "For your parents?" Her lips pressed together. She wanted to speak, but fear held her voice. She had learned long ago when she told others about her parents, they only laughed or looked at her with pity. No one believed. No one cared. The man's voice softened even more. "Tell me, how long have you been waiting?" Her throat tightened. For a moment she almost stayed silent, but then she saw something in his eyes. Not mockery, not pity, just a steady, patient curiosity. So she whispered, "Many years, since I was little." The words made his heart twist. He looked at her thin frame, the hunger in her cheeks, the tiredness hidden in her glowing eyes. She had survived all this time, just to keep a promise alive. "What happened?" he asked. She lowered her head. "They went on a mining mission. They promised they would return. They said they would bring treasures, but..." She paused, her voice trembling. "They didn't come back." The human frowned. He had traveled across many colonies, and he knew mining missions were dangerous. Accidents, collapses, betrayals. Many workers never returned. Yet this girl still waited as if time had not moved. "They're late," she whispered, almost to herself. "But they will return. I know it." The human felt a lump rise in his throat. He wanted to tell her the truth. That promises sometimes broke, that life was cruel, but looking at her he could not say it. The light in her eyes was fragile, but it was all she had. If he shattered it now, what would remain of her? Before he could speak, voices rang out nearby. "Look at her," a group of aliens sneered as they passed. Still waiting, still dreaming. One of them, a tall alien, with scaled skin, pointed at the human. "Now she has fooled a human too. Careful, traveler, that girl's cursed. Anyone who helps her disappears." The others laughed, shaking their heads, then moved on. The human's jaw tightened. He looked at the girl. Her face was red, her eyes lowered, as if she had been stabbed. She whispered, "They always say that. They say I am cursed. They say my parents left me because I am weak. Anger boiled in the man's chest. He had heard enough. He leaned closer, his voice firm. They are wrong, don't listen to them. The girl's eyes widened. She had never heard anyone say that before. The man placed a hand lightly on the floor beside her, steady and strong. You're not cursed, you're just waiting too long. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong. Her lips parted, but no words came out. No one had ever defended her like this. For the first time in years, she felt the faint warmth of belief, not her own, but someone else's. The human straightened up, scanning the spaceport. Something felt strange. Why was the crowd so eager to mock her? Why did they call her cursed? And why had no one ever told her the truth about her parents? There was more here, hidden beneath years of silence. He looked down at her once more. What's your name? She hesitated. Then in a soft voice she said, Leora. The name fit her. Delicate, almost glowing, like a fragile light in the dark. The man gave a small nod. I'm Marcus. She repeated it under her breath as if tasting the word. Marcus. The spaceport gates rumbled as another ship arrived. Leora's eyes flashed with sudden hope, her body tensing as she searched every face that stepped out. For a moment, Marcus almost wished her parents would appear, just to see her smile. But of course they didn't. Her shoulders sank. The crowd thinned. Marcus clenched his fists. He had only met her yesterday, but he already knew this wasn't just a sad story. This was something darker, something intentional. Why did no one help her? Why did everyone call her cursed? And why, deep down, did he feel that if he walked away now, he would regret it forever? The answer was already clear, though he would not admit it yet. This child was not his responsibility. But he could not leave. The cruel truth, Marcus could not rest. That night, after meeting the alien girl, her words replayed in his mind again and again. They promised. They will return. Her voice had been full of hope, but behind it he had heard something else. Loneliness sharp enough to cut. He lay awake in the small room he had rented near the spaceport. The walls were thin, the lights flickering, but his mind burned with one question. What really happened to her parents? The next morning, Marcus did what he always did when something didn't feel right. He started asking questions. The local traders were the easiest to talk to. He bought a drink, slipped a few coins, and leaned close. Tell me about the girl who waits by the docks. The merchant frowned. That one? Better stay away, human. She's trouble. Her parents went missing years ago. Missing? Marcus pressed. Or dead. The man's eyes darted away. Dead, most likely. Mining accidents happen all the time, but no one tells her. Let her keep waiting. She'll break sooner or later. The words made Marcus's jaw tighten. He thanked the merchant and moved on, asking others in the bazaar. Each answer was the same. Her parents were gone, lost in the black. Yet when he asked how or why, the aliens grew tense, changing, the subject lowering their voices. It was not just tragedy, it was silence. By afternoon, Marcus's patience wore thin. He tracked down one of the dock guards, a heavy-set alien with deep scars across his jaw. Slipping a few credits into the man's palm, Marcus asked, You've been here long. Tell me about her parents. The guard hesitated, but the money loosened his tongue. They didn't die in an accident, he muttered. They were betrayed. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Betrayed? The guard nodded. The mining guild promised fair shares, but her parents found something valuable. Too valuable. The leaders decided to keep it for themselves. The crew was silenced. No survivors. And the girl? She was left behind, a reminder of what happens when people ask too many questions. The words hit Marcus like a blow. Betrayed. Silenced. Left. Behind as a warning. He felt a deep, hot anger rise in his chest. So this was the truth. Leora's parents never abandoned her. They had been murdered for greed. and the colony leaders let the child suffer, mocking her hope, turning her waiting into a cruel joke. He clenched his fists. That evening, Marcus found Leora at her usual spot. She sat cross-legged on the cold floor, eyes fixed on the gates as, always. The crowd buzzed with energy, but she seemed apart from it all, trapped in her own small world of hope. He walked over and sat beside her. She glanced at him, surprised, then looked back at the gates. "You came back," she whispered. "Yes," Marcus said quietly. For a while they sat in silence, watching the ships arrive and depart. Each time the gates opened, her body tensed, with hope. Each time disappointment followed. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Leora, do you want the truth?" She turned her head slowly, her glowing eyes wide. "The truth?" He nodded. His throat felt dry. "About your parents." Her hands clenched in her lap. She whispered, "You know where they are?" Marcus hesitated. His heart twisted. How could he tell her? If he spoke the truth, her hope would shatter. But if he stayed silent, he would become part of the cruelty that kept her chained to false promises. He looked into her eyes and saw the fear there. Fear of being left again. Fear of the answer. "I don't know everything," Marcus admitted, softly. "But I know this. They didn't leave you because they wanted to. They didn't abandon you." Her breath caught. "Then, why didn't they return?" Marcus lowered his voice, his words heavy. "Because someone made sure they couldn't." The girl stared at him, her lips trembling. "What do you mean?" He looked away, at the glowing ships beyond the glass. They were betrayed, taken away so they could never come back. The people here, they don't tell you because they don't care. They want you to keep waiting, to keep hurting. For a moment, silence hung between them, thick and suffocating. Then Leora's eyes filled with tears. "No," she whispered. "No, that can't be true. They promised. They promised me." Her small body shook, her hands gripping her knees until her knuckles turned pale. The hope she had clung to for years was breaking in her chest. Marcus wanted to reach out, to hold her. But he didn't. Not yet. She needed space. Her voice cracked, rising louder. If they were betrayed, if they were gone, then why did no one tell me? Why does everyone just laugh? Marcus's eyes hardened. Because they are cowards. Because they don't care about truth. But I do, Leora, and I promise you this. Whatever happened, you won't face it alone anymore. She looked at him then, her glowing eyes wet with tears. She saw the fire in his face, the steady strength in his voice. Something inside her shifted. For the first time, someone wasn't mocking her. For the first time, someone believed she deserved more than waiting. But the truth cut deep. Her parents were never coming back. And now, the world that had stolen them was looking at Marcus too. If he stayed by her side, he would make enemies. Powerful enemies. The air around them felt heavy, almost dangerous. Leora's tears fell silently onto her hands. Marcus sat beside her, watching the gates as if daring the shadows behind them to step forward, because now he knew the cruel truth, and he would not walk away. A promise made. The night was heavy with silence. After hearing the cruel truth from Marcus, Leora sat motionless by the cold walls of the spaceport. Her glowing eyes were wet, her small hands clenched so tightly that they trembled. The truth had cut deeper than any stone. Her parents had not abandoned her. They had not broken their promise. They had been taken, betrayed, stolen from her by greed and cruelty. The knowledge was like fire and ice together, burning her heart, freezing her hope. Marcus sat beside her, silent but firm. He had told her what no one else dared, and now he waited, letting her breathe, letting her choose whether to believe him or not. Finally, her voice broke the silence, fragile like glass. "They're gone, truly gone." Marcus turned to her, his jaw tight. "Yes," he said softly. but not because they chose to leave you. Her small shoulders shook. Then why? Why did no one tell me? Why did everyone laugh? Why did they let me sit here all these years? Marcus's eyes hardened. Because it was easier for them to mock you than to stand against the truth. They feared the guild. They feared the leaders. So they left you to suffer. Leora closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. For years she had waited with unbroken faith, believing one day her parents would step through the gates. Now all of that hope collapsed into pain so sharp she could barely breathe. She whispered, almost pleading, "And you? Will you leave me too? Everyone does. Everyone always leaves." Her words stabbed at Marcus's chest. He had traveled countless systems, fought wars, seen betrayal, seen death. But never had he felt such weight in a child's voice. She wasn't asking him for food or shelter or gifts. She was asking him for one thing no one had ever given her: to stay. Marcus turned toward her fully. His face was hard, but his eyes burned with quiet fire. Slowly, he lowered himself to one knee before her, so his gaze was level with hers. "Won't," he said. Her head jerked up, surprised. "You won't?" He nodded firmly. "I won't leave you, Leora. Not like they did. Not like the rest of them. I swear it." The girl stared at him, her lips parted, her tears still falling. His words sounded impossible, yet there was no hesitation in his voice, no weakness. Just truth. "You promise," she whispered. "I promise," Marcus said. His voice carried weight, like stone laid into the foundation of a new house. For the first time in years, Leora felt something stir inside her chest. Not the old fragile hope of waiting for her parents, but a new warmth. Different, frightening, but real. Someone was choosing to stay. Someone was choosing her. But in the shadows of the crowd, whispers stirred. The mockers who had laughed at her waiting now saw something they did not expect. A human standing beside the cursed child. A human making a promise he could not possibly keep. A scaled alien sneered from the edge of the port. "Foolish human, do you think you can protect her? You'll vanish like the others who asked too many questions." Another voice joined in, mocking. "Swear all you like. The guild doesn't forgive. You'll be ash like her parents." Marcus stood, his height towering over them, his voice sharp as steel. "Let them hear me," he said, his words carrying across the port. "I don't fear the guild. I don't fear your threats. From this day, she's not alone." The crowd grew restless. Some laughed, some muttered nervously, and some, for the first time, looked at Leora not with mockery, but with curiosity. Leora's heart pounded. She had spent years being invisible, forgotten, mocked. Now in a single moment someone had spoken for her. Someone had stood up against the whispers. She clutched Marcus's sleeve, her small fingers trembling but refusing to let go. Her voice was small but filled with something new. "If you stay, if you really stay, then I'll believe you." Marcus looked down at her, and for a moment he almost smiled. Not a smile of joy, but of grim determination. "Then believe it, Leora, because I don't make promises I can't keep." But as the words left his mouth, a shadow passed over them. From the far side of the port, two figures watched, men cloaked in dark uniforms, insignias of the guild burned into their shoulders. Their eyes narrowed at the sight of Marcus kneeling beside the girl. One of them whispered to the other, "The human is interfering." The other nodded coldly. Then he must be dealt with, just like her parents. They turned and melted back into the crowd, unseen by Marcus and Leora. The girl wiped her tears with her small hands, looking at Marcus with a mixture of fear and fragile trust. For the first time, she whispered his name, almost clinging to it. "Marcus." He looked at her, his voice steady. "Yes? Don't let them take you too." His gaze darkened, but he laid his hand gently over hers. "They won't. Not while I breathe." Above them, the spaceport lights dimmed, signaling the close of the day. Ships rumbled in the distance and the gates sealed shut for the night. But for Leora, this night felt different from every night before. She was no longer waiting alone. And somewhere, hidden in the dark, danger began to move. Shadows of danger. The days after Marcus's promise felt strange for Leora. For the first time, in years she was not sitting alone. Marcus always came back. He sat beside her as she waited by the gates. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't. But his presence was enough. The crowd noticed. Whispers spread through the port like wildfire. The human has claimed the cursed girl. He swore to stay. Some mocked, some warned, but all kept their distance. Something about Marcus's steady gaze made them uneasy. But in the hidden corners of the colony, other voices spoke in hushed tones. The guild had noticed. The same guild that had betrayed Leora's parents. To them, Marcus was a problem. A stranger digging too deep, daring to challenge their silence. Problems like him didn't live long. One night, as Leora curled in her blanket near the docks, Marcus kept watch. He had insisted she no longer sleep in the open streets. Instead, he had found a small sheltered corner, safer than before. He stood against the wall, arms crossed, his eyes scanning the shadows. The air felt heavy. Too quiet. Marcus's soldier's instincts stirred. Years of battle had taught him when danger was close. Tonight, it was crawling over his skin like cold fire. Marcus? Leora's small voice broke the silence. She peeked up at him, her glowing eyes wide. Why are you awake? Don't you ever sleep? He gave her a faint smile. I sleep when it's safe. Tonight isn't safe. Her little body tensed. Safe? You mean someone's coming? Before Marcus could answer, a flicker moved in the darkness. Shadows detached themselves from the walls, 3 cloaked figures, stepping silently, their blades glinting under the faint light. Leora gasped and pressed back against the wall. Marcus! He moved instantly, pulling her behind him. His coat shifted as his hand drew the knife strapped to his belt, the steel catching the dim light. His voice was low, steady, unshaken. Stay behind me, Leora. The 3 assassins spread. Out, circling. One hissed in a guttural voice. Step away from the girl, human. She belongs to no one, and those who claim her disappear. Marcus's jaw tightened. I'm not stepping away. The assassins laughed, cold and sharp. One lunged forward, blade flashing. Marcus met him head-on, twisting his wrist, slamming the man into the ground with brutal precision. Another charged from the side. Marcus spun, knife slashing, forcing him back. The third tried to grab Leora, but Marcus moved faster than thought. He shoved her aside and kicked the attacker hard enough to send him crashing into the wall. The fight was fierce but quick. Years of war had sharpened Marcus into something more than a man. His movements were controlled, deadly, every strike carrying the weight of survival. When the last assassin crawled back, clutching his bleeding arm, he spat on the ground. You can't protect her forever, human. The guild owns this colony. You'll be dead before the next cycle. Then, dragging his wounded companions, he vanished into the shadows. Silence fell again. Leora trembled, clutching her blanket, her small chest rising and falling in panic. They tried to take me. Marcus knelt in front of her, his knife still in his hand, his breath heavy, but his voice was calm. And they failed. I told you, Leora. You're not alone anymore. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time not from sadness, this time from shock. No one had ever fought for her. No one had ever stood between her and danger. But Marcus had. She threw her small arms around his neck, holding him tightly. Don't leave me, please. He froze for a moment, then slowly wrapped one arm around her, his knife still in the other hand. His voice was low, a vow carved in stone. I won't. Not now. Not ever. The girl clung to him, her small frame shaking. For the first time, the shadows of the colony had struck at her directly, and for the first time they had been defeated. But Marcus knew better than to relax. The assassins had not come on their own. They had been sent, which meant the guild was watching. And this was only the beginning. When he looked over Leora's small shoulder, his eyes were sharp as steel. He had faced warlords, pirates, and monsters across the stars. But this was different. This was personal. The guild thought they could frighten him. They thought they could scare him into walking away. But Marcus had seen enough. They had taken her parents. They had mocked her pain. And now, they wanted to silence her forever. No. Not. While he breathed. The spaceport was quiet again, but beneath that silence lurked danger. Marcus knew more shadows would come, stronger and deadlier. But he also knew one thing. The guild had made a mistake. They had awakened the fury of a human who refused to abandon a child. And now, the war for Leora's future had begun. The stand. The morning after the attack, the colony buzzed with whispers. Everyone had heard about the fight in the docks. A human had taken down 3 guild assassins. Some laughed, saying the guild would crush him soon. Others spoke quietly, almost with awe, about how he had stood in front of the cursed girl and refused to fall. Leora walked close to Marcus as they moved through the crowded bazaar. Her small hand clutched his sleeve like it was the only anchor in the world. For years, she had been invisible, mocked, and ignored. Now eyes followed her everywhere she went, but not with kindness, with fear, with anger. Marcus, she whispered, her voice trembling. They will come again. Stronger. What if they take you like they took my parents? Marcus looked down at her, his jaw firm. Then they'll learn I'm not so easy to take. She bit her lip, tears threatening again. But they always win. No one fights them. No one dares. Marcus stopped walking. He turned, crouching so his face was level with hers. His voice was steady, unshaken. That's because no one tried. They were too afraid. But I'm not afraid, Leora. I've faced worse than them, and I won't back down. Not while you need me. Her eyes widened, searching his face for any hint of doubt. She found none, but even as Marcus spoke, he knew the truth. This wasn't going to end quietly. The guild wouldn't stop sending shadows. They wanted the girl silenced, her memory erased, her very existence forgotten. If he wanted to protect her, he would have to make a stand, one so strong the guild itself would feel it. That night, the attack came again. Marcus had expected it. He had moved Leora into an abandoned storage room near the docks, hidden and safe. He told her to stay quiet no matter what. Her glowing eyes had begged him not to go, but he had placed a hand on her shoulder and whispered, "Trust me." Then he stepped out into the open. The guild enforcers came in groups this time, not just shadows. 6 of them, armored, carrying stun weapons and blades, their boots clanging against the metal floor. Their leader, a tall alien with ridged skin and cruel yellow eyes, stepped forward with a sneer. "So," the leader growled, "you're the human who thinks he can defy us." Marcus stood tall, unarmed except for the knife at his belt. His voice carried clear in the night. "You murdered her parents, you mocked her pain, and now you try to silence her. No more. Tonight this ends." The enforcers laughed. "You think you can fight the guild alone? You'll die here, and no one will even remember your name." Marcus's lips curled into a thin smile. "Then let me remind you what humans are." The fight erupted like fire. The first enforcer lunged with a shock baton. Marcus sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and twisted until bones cracked. The weapon dropped. Marcus caught it in one hand and struck hard, dropping the alien to the ground. Another came from behind, blade raised high. Marcus ducked, spun, and slammed his elbow into the attacker's chest. The alien flew back, gasping for breath. The leader snarled, barking orders. "Kill him! Now!" 3 came at once. Marcus moved like a storm, fast and relentless. Years of battles had carved his body into a weapon. He disarmed one, slammed another into the wall, and sent the third sprawling, with a brutal kick. The leader stepped forward at last, drawing a curved blade that gleamed under the lights. "You can't protect her. She's cursed. Her parents were fools, and so are you." Marcus's eyes burned with fury. "No. The only curse here is your greed." Their blades clashed, steel against alien metal. Sparks flew, the sound echoing through the empty port. The leader struck with wild strength, but Marcus fought with precision. Every move was calculated, every strike fueled by rage and purpose. Finally, Marcus knocked the blade aside and drove his fist into the leader's jaw. The alien staggered, stunned, and Marcus pressed the blade of his knife to the enemy's throat. The other enforcers froze. Marcus's voice cut through the silence. "Listen to me. She is under my protection now. If you touch her again, if you even breathe her name, in mockery, I will come for you. I don't care how powerful you think you are, I will burn your guild to ashes." The leader's yellow eyes widened, fear flickering for the first time. Marcus shoved him back, sending him sprawling across the floor. The enforcers gathered their fallen and retreated, dragging their leader away. Their laughter was gone. Their arrogance was gone. Only silence remained. Marcus stood there breathing hard, blood dripping from a cut on his cheek. His knife hung loose in his hand, but his eyes were steel. From the shadows, Leora peeked out, trembling. She had heard everything. She saw the bruises on his body, the fire in his stance, the enemies fleeing into the night. She ran to him, clutching his arm. "Marcus, when you stood against them, you didn't run." He looked down at her, his voice quiet but firm. "I told you, Leora, I don't make promises I can't keep." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of awe, of hope. For the first time in her life, she believed maybe the guild wasn't unstoppable. Maybe the curse wasn't real. Maybe with Marcus beside her, she wasn't doomed to be forgotten. The night air was still heavy with danger, but in that silence, something had changed. The colony had seen a human make a stand, and nothing would ever be the same again. A new family, the spaceport was never truly silent, but after Marcus's stand against the guild, the air felt different. Where once there had been cruel laughter aimed at Leora, now there was fear. Fear of the human who had fought like fire itself. But fear alone could not protect her. Marcus knew this. The guild would return, perhaps with more strength, perhaps with more cunning. He could not wait for them to strike again. That evening, Marcus guided Leora away from the docks. Her small hand clung to his as they walked through narrow streets lit by pale neon. She glanced back at the gates, her voice soft. "I used to think that was the only door that mattered. I thought if I waited long enough, it would open and bring my parents back." Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "Some doors never open again, but that doesn't mean life ends. Sometimes you have to choose another path." She looked up at him, eyes glistening. "And if I walk that path, will you walk with me?" Marcus stopped, kneeling so his eyes met hers. "I already promised. I'll walk it until my last breath." Her lips trembled and she leaned forward, hugging him tightly. For years she had clung to hope that never came. Now she clung to something new, someone real. The next morning, Marcus went to the bazaar. This time, he didn't ask questions quietly. He stood in the center of the square, Leora beside him, and spoke loudly enough for all to hear. Her parents were betrayed. They were silenced by the guild. And this child was left to suffer as their cruel reminder. No more. From now on, she is not alone. From now on, she has a protector. The crowd stirred. Some sneered, some whispered. But others, quiet faces in the crowd, looked at Leora with something different. Not mockery, not fear, respect. One old merchant bowed his head. "Human, you are reckless, but you are right. The guild's shadow has gone unchallenged too long." A mother in the crowd pulled her child closer, whispering, "She isn't cursed, she's just a girl." The whispers spread like fire. For years, the colony had treated Leora as a joke, a curse, a forgotten soul. But Marcus's defiance had shaken them. His courage was contagious. That night, Leora sat beside Marcus in the small shelter he had claimed for them. Her glowing eyes watched the stars through a broken skylight. "All this time," she whispered, "I thought I had no one. I thought I had to wait forever, but Marcus, now I feel like I belong. He turned toward her, his face lit faintly by starlight. You do belong. With me. She blinked, stunned. With you? He nodded. I may not be your father, but I'll stand in his place if you'll let me. You need a family, and His voice grew softer. I need someone to remind me why I still fight. Her chest tightened. Slowly, a tear slid down her cheek, but it wasn't the lonely tear of the past. It was the tear of finding something she thought was gone forever. You mean, I can call you family? Marcus reached out and placed a hand over hers. Yes, from this day you are mine to protect, not cursed, not forgotten, just Leora, my family. Her tears came freely now, but she was smiling, a small, fragile smile that carried more light than all the ships in the port. She threw her arms around him again, her voice muffled against his chest. Then I'll never be alone again. He held her close, his rough hands steady on her small back. For years she had been waiting for parents who would never return. But fate had given her something else, a human who chose her, who refused to leave. Far away in the guild's hidden chambers, leaders fumed. The human challenges us. He turns the colony against our silence. This cannot continue. But even as they planned, their power was already cracking. For courage spreads like wildfire, and the colony had seen something they could not unsee. A man standing against fear and a forgotten child becoming more than a curse. As dawn broke, Leora stood beside Marcus, her silver skin glowing in the morning light. She looked up at him and whispered, Do you think my parents would be proud? Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes steady. They'd be proud that you never gave up. And they'd be proud you found someone to stand with you. You carry their strength, Leora, but from now on you also carry mine. Her eyes shone, and for the first time in years, she felt whole. She no longer waited at the gates for a promise that would never come. She no longer believed she was cursed. She was Leora, daughter of the lost and family of the human who had defied the galaxy for her. Together, they walked through the port as the first ship of the day arrived. The gates opened with their usual hiss, but this time, Leora didn't look for the faces she had waited for all her life. She only looked at Marcus walking beside her, and she knew her waiting was finally over.